The last train had already pulled away when Rachel Monroe realized the suitcase beside her contained everything she still owned. At 32 years old, she stood alone on a quiet platform in Connecticut, wearing a red jumpsuit she had bought for a job interview that never happened, with $43 in her purse and a dead phone in her hand. The station clock clicked past 7, each movement of its hands sounding louder than the one before. Rachel had spent years telling people she was fine. That evening, with nowhere to sleep and no one left to call, the lie finally became too heavy to carry. She lowered her head, gripped the handle of her suitcase, and whispered to herself, "I don't know where to go." Before we continue, if you believe kindness can still change a life, hope can survive hard seasons, forgiveness can heal old wounds, and everyone deserves compassion and a second chance. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes a simple story reminds us that goodness is still quietly moving through the world. 3 weeks earlier, Rachel had been living in Providence, Rhode Island, working as an assistant for a small event company. She wasn't wealthy, but she had built a modest life that felt secure. Then the company closed unexpectedly after losing its largest contracts. Her final paycheck barely covered rent and overdue bills. Rachel applied everywhere, waking before sunrise to send resumes and staying awake past midnight answering emails. When an interview opportunity came from a hotel outside Hartford, she spent the last of her savings on transportation and arrived believing it might be her turning point. But the position had been filled that morning. The manager apologized. Rachel smiled, thanked him, and walked outside before allowing herself to cry. Her landlord had already told her the apartment could no longer be held. Her mother had passed away years earlier, and Rachel's only older brother, Matthew, was stationed overseas with the military and unreachable for several weeks. Pride had kept her from telling him how badly things had fallen apart. She had always been the dependable sister, the woman who remembered birthdays, brought soup when friends were sick, and insisted she needed nothing. Now, sitting beneath the station canopy, she understood how lonely independence could become when carried too far. That was when Nathan Carter noticed her. Nathan was 39, a carpenter from a nearby town who had come to the station to meet a client. The client canceled, but as Nathan turned toward the parking lot, he saw Rachel staring at the departure board without moving. He initially walked past. Then, he stopped. There was something familiar in the way she held herself, too still, as though one small movement might cause everything inside her to collapse. Nathan knew that posture because 6 years earlier, after his wife had died from an illness, he had spent months pretending grief was something a man could simply outwork. He approached carefully and asked if she had missed her train. Rachel gave a small, embarrassed smile and said there wasn't another train for her to miss. Nathan didn't understand. Slowly, painfully, she explained that she had lost her job, then her apartment, then the interview she had believed would save her. She tried to laugh at the absurdity of it, but her voice broke. "So," she said quietly, "I guess the truth is, I have nowhere left to go." Nathan looked toward the tracks. Then, he looked back at her. "Then stay with me." Rachel stared at him. Nathan immediately explained that his house had a separate guest room above the garage, with its own entrance and bathroom. His sister, Grace, lived 10 minutes away and could come over so Rachel would feel comfortable and safe. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't expecting anything. He simply remembered what it felt like when life became unbearable and people kept walking past. Rachel's first instinct was to refuse. Every warning she had ever heard told her not to trust strangers. Nathan understood. He called Grace on speakerphone, and 20 minutes later, Grace arrived with her teenage daughter, Hannah. Grace spoke gently, showed Rachel her driver's license, and even offered to take her to a local women's support center instead if she preferred. For the first time that day, Rachel felt she had a choice instead of another door closing. She went with them. Nathan's guest room was simple, with pale walls, a wooden dresser, and a handmade quilt folded across the bed. Rachel placed her suitcase on the floor and stood in silence. Then she saw a small card on the nightstand. Grace had written 3 words before leaving. "You are safe." Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and cried. The following morning, Nathan didn't ask question. He left coffee and toast outside her door before heading to his workshop. Rachel noticed a handwritten sign on the workshop wall later that afternoon. Carter Custom Woodworks. She also noticed stacks of invoices scattered across Nathan's desk. Nathan was talented with wood but terrible with paperwork. Rachel, who had spent years organizing events, schedules, and budgets, offered to help. One afternoon became 3 days. 3 days became 2 weeks. Rachel reorganized Nathan's client files, created a scheduling system, and contacted customers whose messages had accidentally been overlooked. Within a month, Nathan's workshop had more confirmed orders than he'd received in the previous quarter. He insisted on paying Rachel. She refused at first, but Nathan calmly reminded her that kindness wasn't supposed to erase dignity. She had worked. She deserved wages. Those words changed something in her. Rachel began applying for permanent positions again, but this time she no longer described herself as someone begging for an opportunity. She remembered her abilities. She remembered her value. When a growing design firm in Hartford offered her an operations position, she ran into Nathan's workshop, holding the email on her phone. Tears streaming down her face. Nathan smiled, but behind that smile was something Rachel hadn't expected. Sadness. She had spent so much time rebuilding her own life that she hadn't noticed how deeply Nathan's quiet loneliness had begun to soften. The house had laughter again. Grace visited more often. Hannah came by for dinner. Rachel planted flowers near the porch, and Nathan repaired an old kitchen table because Rachel once mentioned it, reminded her of her mother's. The day Rachel packed her suitcase to move into a small apartment near her new job, Nathan stood by the same guest room door where their strange friendship had begun. Neither of them knew what to say. Rachel looked at the suitcase and suddenly remembered the train station. "The last time I carried this," she said, "I thought my life was over." Nathan lowered his eyes. "Maybe you were just between destinations." Rachel smiled through her tears. She did move into her apartment. Nathan never asked her to stay out of guilt, and Rachel never stayed because she was afraid to stand alone. But every Sunday, they had dinner together. Slowly, naturally, friendship became something deeper. A year later, Nathan brought Rachel back to Riverdale Station. On the same platform where she had once believed she had nowhere left to go, he held her hands and asked whether she might consider building a home with him, not because she needed saving, but because they had both learned how beautiful life could become when two healed hearts chose each other freely. Rachel said yes. If Rachel and Nathan's journey touched your heart, please show this story some love, share it with someone facing an uncertain season, and subscribe for more stories about the quiet moments that restore our faith in people. Your support helps these messages of compassion and hope reach someone who may desperately need them tonight. And before this story ends, I have one special request. Please leave a comment and write, "Kindness can open a new door." You never know who might read your words and decide to hold on to hope for one more day. Years later, Rachel kept the old suitcase in the guest room of the home she and Nathan shared. She never threw it away. Whenever life became difficult, she would look at it and remember a lonely station, a dead phone, $43, and a stranger who could have kept walking. Nathan didn't fix Rachel's life that night. He simply gave her a safe place to stand while she found the strength to rebuild it herself. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't someone carrying us forever. Sometimes, it's one person looking at us in our lowest moment and saying, "You don't have to face tonight alone." How? Cantivai Hendo Funti.